Okay, so this video I'm going to cover some of the more advanced sketching tools, so things like relationships, arrayed features, and then maybe just a few things like fonts and inputting text. Should be quite a short video. So, in the previous video about sketching we covered all the basics, how to produce geometry, but we didn't really talk about how you could perhaps use geometric identities, as it were, so symmetry, locations, alignment, to position that geometry relative to each other and produce a sort of framework, so if you make one change in one area you could actually drive a number of others with that change. So to start, I'm just going to create some random geometry and I'm going to show you a few tricks, and hopefully we'll end up with something that could be quite interesting from a teaching point of view. So I just created this sort of random non-kite shape, off-kite shape, sort of like a totally irregular pentagon, and I'm going to use this panel here called Relate. So first up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose one called Connect. So Connect is where you can move one node to sit on another. So here I'm going to go and I'm going to select Connect and I'm going to choose a node. It's already a closed shape, but I'm going to select it, left click, and then I'm going to choose another node, and here I'm going to choose the origin for the entire file. So I'm going to click that and you can see it's just driven this connection node to be on the origin straight away. So I'm going to undo that, Control Z, and now I'm going to perhaps think about another opportunity. So let's talk about an open shape. If I drew an open shape like this, what I could do is I could go back to my Connect tool in Relate, left click, select one endpoint, select another endpoint, and it will drive the first point to the second. So that's interesting, I think. I'm going to select this, so I left click and hold, release the left mouse button, hit delete on the keyboard, and it removes that geometry for me. Okay, so what else could I do? Well, I could try and make something called horizontal vertical. What does this mean? Well, it means I can force some lines to be horizontal or vertical. So here I am, got my orange line, going to left click on it. Notice A, it moved, and B, we got this new hieroglyph in pink showing a cross. That shows that it is either horizontal or vertical. If I repeat the process, so up here, it's going to make and force that to be horizontal because the line was originally closer to being horizontal. Okay, so that's also perhaps quite interesting. Tangent, right, okay, so let's just create a circle, which is, I don't know, here. I'm going to try and play with this tangent tool. Let's see what happens. So I'm no guarantee it's going to work correctly. I'm going to select the first element, and then hold the second element, and it has moved the circle so that it comes into tangent contact with the first line. Okay, so another interesting little tool, and this circular hieroglyph in pink shows that there's a tangent relationship on the go there. So I'm just going to get rid of those by undoing. So what else could we do with this? We've got some more tools down here. Well, maybe we could play at the idea of making two lines parallel with each other. So in this case, let's left click to choose a tool, choose the first line with a left click, choose the second line with a left click, and watch the screen. And you'll notice now that I've driven those two to be parallel with each other, and it has caused quite a lot of destruction. The first line had to move to be parallel to the second line I selected. So I'm going to undo that again. What else could I do? Well, how about making them equal? So equal what? So I'm going to select the first line, it's going to drive it to be the same as the second line somehow, and what it's done there is it has made them equal length. And you can see here the hieroglyph showing that the two are equal to each other. Okay, so then I could also come back here and I could now go and say, alright, I want this one to be parallel as well, and suddenly we're starting to get a line which we've got same length and same directionality. And then I could also drive this one here to be perpendicular, and you can actually stack these up. So what happens if I now tell this line here to be horizontal? Well, we get some very strange geometries all of a sudden. So there we go, quite a powerful tool if you want to try and use geometric drives, try and make things symmetric or related to each other. There is also a symmetry tool, makes two elements symmetric. So let's have a play with this. So I'm going to left click this one, I'm going to left click this one. Now, I'm not sure how we're going to try and drive these two to be symmetric. I'm going to try a third line. Now then, conflicts with existing relationships. So now in a situation we've got too many relationships and it's unable to compute all of them simultaneously. It sort of makes sense, I think. How could I try and drive this? I can undo, and I could try potentially, if I drew a line through the origin like so, I could try to use symmetric. So I'm going to choose this one, I'm going to choose this one, I'm going to choose the middle line, and you can see now that we've got some sort of weird driven constraint where the first line I selected is a mirror line, and then the two secondary lines I selected are the ones around it. So I'm going to redo that. I'm learning as I go. So symmetric, left click. First line is the mirror line, then these two should be symmetrical around it. So that's quite nice. Okay, so starting to get an understanding for the basic drives that we've got. Collinear means that we are going to end up with two points that exist on the same line. Okay, so to do that, I don't think we can do that with any of the geometry we've already got. What I could try and do is I could try and create another line, which is like so, and we could choose collinear with a left click, and a second line, and I'm going to drive the first line to be in line with the second line I selected. That could be very, very useful for you when drawing things. Not only that, these relationships remain. So now if I were to change the angle, for instance, around which things are moving, so if I were to choose my smart dimension, go between one line, go between another line, he says, let's choose angular dimension, 1, 2, let's try and drive this to be 25. You can see that the other line, which is not connected, has followed that original relationship. So that I think is quite cool. Okay, concentric. So what does that mean? Let's draw two circles. Let's make sure the circles are not on the same centers. Let's choose the first circle, and then let's choose the second circle with a left click. It drags the first circle I selected to be concentric with the second circle I selected. And also you can make things perpendicular. So why don't I choose the first line here to be perpendicular with the second line, and hey ho, you can see in pink there is a right angle symbol there too. So I hope that gives you an idea of some of the tools available to you for these constraints. You can also lock some of them off. You can lock a particular key point, so I could choose that in green and lock it and say you are unable to move. So hopefully if I take the select tool, hover over, left click, that will never shift even though I've not dimensioned it in place particularly. It's a bit like grounding it, adding an anchor point. So relationships are interesting. Right, okay, so let's do a bit of deleting and let's decide what we're going to do here. Sort of interesting shape I've made. So the most basic form of pattern that you could possibly produce would be that of a mirrored pattern. Obviously if you're going to create a mirror, then you need to have a mirror line around which to do your mirroring. So here I'm going to draw a line in which I'm going to use to do my mirroring. So I left click to produce that through. Now I'm going to left click, select the mirror tool, and it says click on the elements to modify. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the lines that I want to move, and then click on the first point I want to draw my mirror line. So technically I didn't need to draw the blue line first, but I like to do that personally just to make it very visible to me and perhaps create a structure along which I can then easily do the work. And you see here I can move my mirror line around wherever I want to try and produce my geometry. So there we go, I've gone and produced. We can then also produce more and just repeat it to produce patterns if we so wish. If you would have wanted to have produced an array, you can obviously go ahead and create any patterns that you see fit, and you can also rotate features afterwards too. So I was just left clicking to do that. There's a lot of opportunities available there. I can also just go and delete that line. It doesn't delete the mirrored feature because I just used that line as a structure. So now I'm going to try and include some font, try and build up some annotation so we can add in some text. I've chosen a text tool, literally just add it in. You can see here that we've got some font on the go. I'm just going to select as much of it as I can. So I'm just holding shift and selecting, and I can obviously go and increase the size. There are a number of fonts available. Anything where you see International Standards Organization, ISO, means that it is a standard annotation font, but all the fonts installed on your machine will also be available for you to use. So some typical ones like Arial or Times New Roman should also be available to you if you so wish. Thing to say about the ISO standards fonts is quite simply that they A, conform to the ISO standards for annotation, and B, they tend to be line types, so they are sort of like a vector format, as it were. So there we go. One other thing to say is obviously I can select that. I could also choose to create patterns with that too, so I could choose to create a mirrored position of any of these. So there we go. However, remember, because this is a font, it will stay the correct way up. We'd have to then go and rotate it ourselves later. From a point of view of features you can create within the sketching environment, I think that really is getting towards it. One thing I haven't shown you is how to move and rotate objects. So here we've got two objects. To move one, you select the move tool. You can then select the features you want to move. Then you choose a point, a home point if you like to move from, left click, and then I'm just moving the mouse around and I left click to drop. Alternatively, I can rotate, so I've left clicked on this little arrow to the right of the move button. Now I'm going to select rotate from the drop down box. I'm going to select my lines that I want to do for rotation. I then select the center around which I want to do my rotation, so I'm going to choose the middle here, and then you start with a 0 line, so is it 0 degrees, and then we're going to build up and go to whatever degree amount we want. And we can also type this angle in, so I can just type in 80 and it'll lock it off, and that really does do it for you. So you've just gone and created a rotation. Okay, so I think from an editing point of view, we've done as much as we can. There are other arrayed features, so let me just undo some of the work I've got and simplify the screen, and then we'll talk about how you can create certain geometric patterns. So you can see here under the Features tab, got the opportunity to make circular patterns and rectangular patterns. Now that will not produce graphical repetition of geometry. So if it says here, it creates a circular pattern of a selected object. So if I left click on that, it's not asking me to select the objects within the sketch. It's just saying, okay, where's the center of the pattern going to be? So I'm going to choose it to be, I don't know, somewhere over here. And then it's saying, okay, where does the start point of the arc exist? I'm going to click that. Now it's just asking, okay, well, which way is positive? So I'm going to click down there. It's actually just made it. Now, in this case, you'll notice that it's just literally a circular, it's just a sketch. There's no features on it. I've not actually created a pattern of anything. I've just created a per circular diameter, a PCD, 4 features to be patterned around. Within this, I can choose, obviously, different numbers of location points. The idea is that you would go and create your object in 3D first, and then you would have a sketch that you are using to define the number of items and where those items go. And within that sketch, you use this circular pattern tool from the Features tab to identify where you want to repeat and pattern the original object around in 3 dimensions. Right, to demonstrate this, let's actually quickly create a pattern. This is going to involve a little bit of 3D work, but we'll go over that in a later video, exactly how I've done the 3D work. For now, just so you can see the logic by which the pattern works, patterns can be controlled from within sketches, and they can be controlled to quite a lot of detail. So I'm just going to quickly show you how this works now. So to go and do the 3D, I'm just going to exit the sketch, allow the graphics to catch up. Zoom in a little bit, choose to turn this 2D thing into a 3D thing. So I'm going to choose the outline of a thing I want to repeat, and then I'm going to say, yep, quite happy with that. I'm going to make it into 3D. Then I am going to say, okay, I could change the name of it, so why don't we call it, I don't know, Tooth 1 if we wanted to. I can click that and you can see that the actual object's called Tooth 1. You don't need to do that, I've just done it for nicety. Then I could go down to Pattern. I'm going to click on the Pattern tool. First thing it's saying is please click on a feature. I could either choose a thing using the screen or the mouse, or actually go over down here to the what I call the browser and left click there. Okay, so great. We've now chosen our thing. I'm going to say, yep, that's what I want to do. Now we've got an opportunity. We could either create a pattern around a plane, so the plane in which it sits upon, or we could use a sketch we've already drawn. So I'm going to select from sketch. I'm going to choose this orange line here. So here's actually our features, and I'm going to come back in and I'm going to say, yep, okay, that's what I want to use. I'm going to tick that, and you now notice that I've gone and produced all of these features just like so. So now I can go to finish. What I could also then do is say, okay, well, I've got my pattern. Wonder if I could modify the. I wonder if I could modify this schedule to turn off or basically remove one of these elements. So I'm going to go back to Edit Profile. I'm going to allow the graphics to catch up again. I'm going to come into here and I'm going to choose to suppress an occurrence. So I'm going to choose here and I'm going to see if I can highlight this orange one here. Okay, so now I'm happy with that. I'm going to say yep, happy. I'm going to try and get out of a sketch. I'm going to allow graphics to catch up. I'm going to finish that, and you can see now that I have removed that one occurrence. So that's obviously quite a powerful tool. Right, so there is one situation in which we can do some fairly complex work and produce lots and lots of complex geometry very, very fast. What else could we do? Well, if I go back into sketch 1 and we turn to look at it, so I'm going to use my view cube here to get back into the sketch. What I could also then do is say, okay, well actually I quite want to get back in, edit the profile, and I want to actually also have a rectangular array, and I'm going to create that rectangular array around this object. So here we are, got one like so. I could choose the size I wanted. I can choose the number of rows and columns I want. I could also ask it to fit. I could fix the size. So let's turn this into 20. See, that's very, very small. 200. There we go. And then make this one 50 millimeters high. Again, very small. Let's make it 200 as well. Okay, so we've now set this all up, and we could say, okay, I actually do not. I could preempt this and say, actually, I don't want that one, or potentially that one to work. I'm going to close the sketch. Going to come out. I can see here that and that are just red circles. The rest of them are greens, so these should all activate, and I can go back, say okay, finish on here, go back to my patterning tool, say I want to modify that object, goes green, select it, select from sketch, select my sketch, tick it again, and lo and behold, we've gone and created yet another pattern. Okay, so once you've created your patterns, you can still go back. You can go in and edit your sketches. So we're going to come back out, re-enter the original sketch, go to Edit, Profile, come into the profile again, allow the graphics to catch up, enter the modifier for the circular sketch. So I don't want 6, I want 12 objects. Hit enter on that. Highlight this, say okay, no actually I quite wanted to have 3 in the Y direction. I just hit delete there, which was pretty careless of me. Just go into there, say no, I want to have 3 locations actually. Now this has changed the entire size of my pattern there because I've got this set of fixed. So if we said fit in there, it's talking about the total height. So actually I would quite like that to remain at 200. There we go. So I just basically added in features in the middle compared to where we were before. You'll also notice that we now do have a missing feature in the middle. So I'm going to have to once again go back to suppress, and actually it's gone back. You can see that one's off there. So that's good. I didn't need to do that. It just wasn't apparent to me in the graphics. So this is all good. Just enter that. Right click to come out, and then close the sketch. Finish. And now you can see we've got a odd situation here. We've got lots and lots and lots of features. The square pattern is unable to compute because this first object is now corrupted by one of the later features. So obviously we have an issue here. This is one of the major problems with ordered logic, as I was speaking about in a previous video. I can go back in and repair this yet though, so we can either choose to reduce the number of these features so that this one stays on its own, the parent stays on its own, or I could suppress this penultimate feature here. Let's quickly do that and prove that that works. So come into there, choose to suppress an object. So edit profile, hover over, choose to suppress, remove that, close the sketch, and now because the parent is on his own, we are able to produce all of these objects again. So quite a powerful set of tools there. There's one last thing I'd really like to show you, so I'm just going to create a new sketch, produce it on that plane here. Construction lines. So construction lines, you may well have been taught at college or at school to use construction lines in CAD. They are geometry that you create to support actual profiles, which you will then pull into 3D. So it might be if you want to set yourself up some permanent center lines or some horizontal lines or whatever it may be. Given that, what you could maybe do is you could say, okay, I want to try and use some of this geometry I already have to create a construction line from. If that is the case, what you may want to try and do is say, okay, I'm going to try and project some of the geometry from the 3D objects I've already created onto my new sketch. To do that, you use this tool here. It is unbelievably useful. It's called Project to Sketch, so I'm going to click on it. I'm just going to say OK. I'm going to try and hover around and find some geometry I like the look of. That one looks pretty tasty to me. It seems like a good baseline. I could also choose another line over here if I wanted to then go and find the center. Let's get that right across here. So I think those two would be intersecting sets. And as a result, I could say, okay, this is useful to me. I could come back in and say, okay, I'd quite like to convert those lines into construction lines. So Zoom in, select the line I've already made, turn it into a construction line. You can see it is dashed rather than solid. Alternatively, you can create geometry yourself, so you can just run around here, produce your geometry. Once you've done that, you could go into that and just turn all of that into construction lines if you so wished, or you can turn construction mode on and just literally then choose a tool and start building away. That works for any shape. So if I make a circle now, all of these things remain as construction lines. So as far as sketching is concerned, I think I've covered it. Now we're going to move on to creating 3D objects for the rest of these part tutorials.